Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. Dogbo333, and welcome back to Hearts of Iron for the New Order. Now, it's been a little bit of it's been a bit of time since we opted into really any HoI 4 in general. I believe last time that would have been about a month ago, actually, when we were uploading. No, wait, 2 months. I can't do my math right. I'm blind as a bat. And about as good as a bat would probably be in math. Anyway. Last time we opted in with Brazil, with the new update of content. We opted in as the bull in the eponymous crow in the bull. Animar de Barros. We stole, but we also did a lot of really advantageous stuff for the Brazilian population. Now it's all through the lens of kleptocracy and horrible government waste. But, you're not going to win them all. And never mind the fact that we ended up almost being forced to align with Nazi Germany. And only went the other way because the focus tree didn't properly work there. It is what it is. So, we're going to hop in. I was going to play the crow, and I still plan on doing so soon. Trademarked, of course. But I was feeling a bit nostalgic for the old days with the Russian content. And so I wanted to just go ahead and hop in and do a good old-fashioned Russian unification run. I've done a fair bit of them, including a lot of the ones out in the Far East. Out of the Far East, we have done Amur. We've done Magadan as Petlin. We have done Buryatia, the Reddit bait. Only two left we have yet to do are Irkutsk and Chita. And Chita has an Australian. That sounds kind of funny. So I figure we'll just do that. So, for many of the Russian exiles in Harbin, the rise of the Russian Fascist Party was a godsend. For the officers of the White Army in the city was a nuisance. They'd spent years fighting to restore the Romanov dynasty to the rightful throne, only to see the exile community abandon the monarchy for this distasteful new ideology. The old generals, led by Adam and Semyonov, reluctantly agreed to work with Rodzewski and the RFP more out of mutual hatred for the Bolsheviks than anything else. When the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union, and it became clear Hitler was not waging war against communism, but against the Russian people, the generals were appalled by Rodzewski's refusal to denounce Nazism. It was decided the partnership could not last, but the generals would wait to split until the time was right. The time came shortly after Rodzewski launched his invasion of the Russian Far East. The riot officers invited Prince Michael Romanoff to a dinner party in Harbin. Once there, they involved him in all their schemes, declaring that they would crown him as the new Tsar and retake the empire. Both Prince Michael's reluctance to join their cause and ineligibility for the throne failed to dissuade them. Soon, Semyonov's clique had seized the city of Chita, denounced the RFP, and declared their loyalty to the newly crowned Tsar. Free of Rodzewski's control and back on Russian soil, the officers are now prepared to destroy the fascist remnants and reunite Russia in the name of Tsar Mikhail II, whether he wants it or not. I think this is the first campaign I'm doing in Russia since the deep freeze reworking. I don't want to start seeing anarchy. But at least the reworking where the map is now a lot more stretched out and funky. So, this is going to be a little interesting too. We're going to go ahead, see if we can't... I want to see if I can do something to ensure... Where's the Russia stuff? Just to get some interesting dynamics going. Let's see, I haven't done this in a while. Vyatka. Could do elections. Do the VNS. I'd like Vyatka to win, because I think that would be a funny Spider-Man pointing at each other path, or outcome. Just do general conservatives, I suppose. And we're going to go ahead and hit the start button. Get working. We're not going to... I don't remember this intro commentary. It's been a little bit since I've done any new TNO campaign, so... But yeah. I forget what I was saying beforehand. I am falling apart here, folks. I apologize for that. But... yeah, I'm not going to touch anything else, because I want to see what's going to happen in the world. See what chaos ends up being unleashed in the world. So, I'll start my timer now, actually. And once we got that kicked off, we will go ahead and commence. Hope you all are doing well. We are, at the time of me recording this, 2 subscribers away from 2,000 subscribers. I have something a bit more grand planned for this, so if this drops when 2,000 subs goes, this isn't the 2,000 sub special, but I want to thank all of you for subscribing. And if I haven't quite made it there, why don't you help me out? If not, push me to past 2,000, then help me move on to 3,000. It would mean something to me. No, I was going to say a lot. I don't want to overinvest. It would make me happy. Reasonably happy. So if you want to make some random guy who you've never met on the internet moderately content to see the number go up on the channel, go ahead and consider it. And let's go ahead and hop on to from the days of Kolchak. During the height of a civil war, Adam and Grigory Semyonov rallied the Transbaikal Cossacks and fought alongside Alexander Kolchak's provisional government in the Russian Far East. After several years of brutal guerrilla warfare, however, Semyonov was eventually defeated and forced to flee the country with his army in tow. The Ataman, along with thousands of other Russian emigres fleeing the Bolshevik regime, settled in the Manchurian city of Harbin. Here, the remnants of the White Army plotted and prepared for the eventual day they would triumphantly cross the Amur and continue the fight against communism once again. As the years went on, their dreams seemed to slip further out of reach, but with the miraculous collapse of the Soviet Union, their chance finally came. Now, the remnants of the White Army and the Transbaikal Cossack hosts find themselves based in their old stronghold of Chita. Nominally, the state was ruled by Mikhail II, also known as Michael Andreevich Romanov. Invited to Harbin under the pretenses of a formal banquet, he instead found himself roped into a daring scheme by the old whites to place a Romanov on the throne of Russia, despite his lack of acclaim. Nowadays, Mikhail II is nothing more than a puppet, with Semyonov and his second-in-command, Boris Shepunov, holding the true reins of power. The Tsar, despite being the new face of the white movement, has little desire to remain in Russia and hopes that one day he'll be able to go home again. Trapped in a foreign land far from home, Mikhail's situation seems hopeless indeed. The task that lies before the White Army is great indeed. From this frozen stronghold, they seek to continue the conflict that began so long ago and restore the long-lost monarchy. The Ataman grows old, and it is unclear what kind of direction his movement would take in his absence. Well, Sonomi Bog. We have some general... I don't remember this being here. That's actually quite nice. We'll just let that go. We have a national power outages going on. Great start to it all, isn't it? Well, this is what we're looking at. So we got all these guys all have descriptions. That's right. This is TNO, so we are going to be reading this a fair bit. Let's take a look at Mikhail II. Prince Michael Andreevich Romanov was born in exile in Versailles, raised in Scotland, studied in London, spent the Second World War in Australia, serving in the Royal Navy. Although he never had hopes of returning to a motherland he had never seen with a Nazi victory, they were dashed by the creation of the Reichskommissariats at war's end. Instead, Prince Michael settled into a civilian life in Australia, working as an aeronautical engineer and staying out of the limelight, until he received an invitation to Harbin. What started out as a dinner party with some white Russian emigres escalated rapidly, as he soon found himself swept away by a clique of white army generals led by the Ataman Semyonov, and installed as Tsar Mikhail II in the Siberian city of Chita, following a swift campaign of steppe warfare. Though he tried to tell him that his parents' marriage was morganatic, and he thus had no claim to the title, they cared little and continued to hold him up as the legitimizing figurehead. The Tsar was now stuck between his ally-turned-enemy Konstantin Radzevsky's fascist clique to the east, Yakutian separatists to the north, Japanese client states to the south, and a post-Soviet dictatorship to the west. Needless to say, he's been dealt better hands. But he is nonetheless determined to make the best of the situation, assuming the generals ever let him determine anything, that is. Well, we got some focuses here. First off, we have the heirs of Harbin. In the aftermath of the Russian Civil War, the remainder of the White Army retreated into Harbin as exiles. Harbin, however you say it. Nursing their wounds and plotting the overthrow of the Soviet Union. Before long, however, fascism coalesced within the city. Under the leadership of Radzevsky and Metkovsky, the Russian Fascist Party, or the RFP, soon became the premier party of the Russian emigres. As the Union collapsed, the Whites and the RFP formed a united front against the Bolsheviks and, for a time, they were successful, until infighting split them apart. Now the three splinters vie for power, each claiming to be the rightful heir of Harbin. Wow, infighting. I didn't realize these guys were left-wing. We have it next, an uneasy figurehead. All hail Tsar Mikhail II, Emperor and Autocrat of all the Russians, by the grace of God. Many praise rings out in Chita for the puppet Tsar, but the reality of the situation is very different indeed. Essentially kidnapped and forced to assume the throne amidst bickering and aging white army officer cliques, Mikhail wishes for little more than to see his home again, far away from Russia. Next, we have the sunset of white chivalry. Much of a state's military leadership consists of aging white army generals, more concerned with past glories than addressing the situation at hand. Many of them are not long for the world, and the liberal nature of the government makes attracting younger and more innovative replacements difficult. Oddly good bonuses for what sounds like a pretty bleak description. Maybe it'll escalate to something worse. Next, we have the Cheryomunsky Air Base. Standing amongst the largest aerodromes in the Far East, Cheryomunsky's long runways and extensive hangar facilities allow for concentration of large aerial fleets. Control of the aerodrome will permit the state to more easily establish air superiority over its enemies, as well as by its very size assist in preventing accidents on takeoff and landings. Then finally, we have the Flight East. Though the West Russian War ended almost a decade ago, Western Russia has never known peace with the Germans. Instead, life has been punctuated by regular bombings, Luftwaffe, and an unending campaign of terror meant to permanently hobble a one-time adversary. Though many Russians have found ways to live amid the violence, others have tried to escape it by fleeing east. This steady stream of refugees has permanently altered the distribution of Russia's population, with many migrating to the far reaches of the country that remain untouched by the Nazi war machine. So that'll only be with us for another 2 or so months. But so be it. We'll go ahead and read about all these guys next time, as well as our little description there. So we have the usual stuff, warlord development, we have raiding and looting. So let's go ahead and get started on some training. We'll go with Shepunov as the field marshal. And for a general, let's go Chernikin. Chernik, however you say it. Railways, we're doing okay, looks like. No. Resources, we could be doing better off, but we have a decent base to start off on. You know, I think we'll eventually get an electric factory, I'm sure, or electric factory. I guess that technically works, but that's not what I meant. We'll get an electricity plant soon, but I want to start. We may as well start building one right now. Economically, we are. Let's take a look. We have a bit of a surplus, and we don't really have much to spend it on. We have no growth. Let's go. Try fighting poverty for the first bit. And we'll do a tax cut to stimulate some sort of economic growth. It's not going to be much. We'll get some inflation going or some money creation as well. We'll do... We'll do 4% just to start things off. How is our poverty starting off? It's not good, and it looks like it's only going to get worse. Yeah, let's just do that for now. Well, in the meanwhile... Well... should probably be working on the economic stuff off the bat. Though some forts would be good. And let's do investments first. Well, we have to do this before we even do anything. So, you know what? There we go. When the Bolsheviks overthrew Alexander Kerensky's unlawful government in the October Revolution, they threw Russia into chaos. The White Army, ourselves included, fought them bravely and for years before being forced to retreat. Keeping the belief of Tsar's restoration alive, we relocated to the Manchurian city of Harbin and formed both a government in exile as well as an unlikely but necessary alliance with the RFP. When the Soviet Union collapsed in the face of Nazi onslaughts, we seized our chance and, with Tsar Mikhail II, moved to take our rightful place. But the fascists betrayed us, stopping our advance and splitting our territory. They claim legitimacy, but they have none. With the leadership of Grigory Semyonov and his ever-loyal generals, true patriots of Mother Russia, we will defeat them and prove that we are clearly the true heirs of Harbin. There you go. Do they have the same focus? Yep. Rods does. Look at that. Start off with admin construction. Let's get the research speed going. And do we want better rifles? Let's do... post-war combat support equipment first. And how are we doing production unit-wise? Not great. But we'll just have to scavenge for loot off the bat. I think we'll go ahead and do that. And then try to get something kicking off there for... kick something off there. Alright. We're ready to unpause. And here we are, the unwilling king. Tsar Mikhail rose, dressed, and prepared for the meeting with his high command. It was to take place in the Grand Royal Palace, an extravagant title for the rather modest residence that he had been installed in. Seeing himself as the head of the table, Mikhail watched as the generals and functionaries entered. Many were very advanced in age, yet were energetic and passionate, the thought of a grand reclamation of Russia by the White Army spurring them to action. Several were younger, primary descendants of emigres or new recruits themselves. He always trusted them more. They were more logical and not shackled to the distant past of the old empire. Admin Semyonov opened the meeting, delivering a speech on the latest developments. His hands shook and his balance was unsteady, but his voice and eyes were crystal clear. One by one, the other generals stated their opinions and expressed their concerns. Mikhail mostly remained silent and only occasionally expressed his expected approval as the other generals expressed their opinions and concerns. His head full of thoughts of life and wife that he had left behind in Australia. Once the meeting was adjourned and escorted by his personal bodyguards, Mikhail decided to walk the streets of Chita. Under freshly fallen snow, the city looked picturesque, and his subjects, from children and old men, happily went about their lives in a surprisingly safe city. Though he was still uncomfortable in the position he had not chosen, Mikhail felt a moment of pride for this island of stability he had been chosen as the figurehead of. One cannot simply reject the throne. Is that a Game of Thrones reference? I feel like it might have been. How are we doing production unit-wise? Well, we need more electricity. I don't want to do this, but I think we need to cut back our military production just so we can get something online. And once we get this factory, it's probably not gonna... We're probably going to have to wait for political power to get reconnect the grids, I think. But, you know what? We'll cross that bridge when we get there, won't we? Moving on. The web weaver. From a distance, Ivan Mikhailov observed as people hurried out from place to place in the market. He heard the vendors cry, the haggling customers, the indistinct chatter of the crowd. Yes, this was where he ruled. This was his domain. Though currently, but not entirely, thanks to Semyonov and Shepunov and their ilk. More and more, they'd overruled his decisions and took over his portfolio. He supposed they had never gone along too well with the general staff, but they were going too far. Somebody needed to put a stop to their control over the government, and Mikhailov knew exactly who that someone would be. Himself, of course. If he couldn't convince Semyonov to loosen his grip, then he might have to resort to more drastic measures. Some freedom would do the people of Chita good, just as it did the economy. Even his plans for a free economy kept making things worse if slander spread by other economists was to be believed. No matter, he just had to try and try again, and eventually he'd show them. He'd show them all. No matter how many times he had to start over. The Reich's last conquest. There we go. The modern Bogatyr. There we go. So it looks like there's no difference immediately, but I'm sure we'll be more informed of that as we go. Our young empire has limited resources, and hard choices will have to be made. We must decide which sector of our nation will receive the majority of government funding. While we could attempt to balance our efforts, such an approach risks an unacceptable dilution of effectiveness. Tsar Mikhail's voiced his preference on funding the so-called loyalist. They wish to focus on developing Chita's infrastructure and expanding its industrial base. To do this, however, much-needed funding will have to be diverted from the military, a dangerous prospect in these desperate times. Ivan Mikhailov, the Minister of Finance, has, together with the General Staff, proposed an alternative idea. That civil spending should not be our priority until the region is unified. That all funding possible should be diverted to the military until the unification is achieved. Although facilitating budget will suffer in the short term, a powerful army may be necessary to secure our position. Our civilian industry needs support. So let's go ahead and take it from there. Vazar's investments. Maybe we should go down this first. Some forts would be very useful, especially with the whatchamacallit, the raids that'll kick off eventually. The city of Chita, over 4 decades ago, was the capital of the Transbaikal Cossack host, where Adaman Semyonov had made his last stand as the final hope for defeating Bolshevism in the Far East. Now it's once again our hope for restoring the Tsar to his rightful place in the nation, and the army must take careful steps to defend its holdings. The provisional capital of monarchy is situated dangerously close to the frontier where our control ends. We have no other choice but to protect it, and thus the High Command has suggested the construction of fortifications and the design of new plans to ensure Chita will not fall. West and north of the city, additional garrisons will be placed and new defensive lines will be formed. As our headquarters, it is the first place where our overhaul of defenses will begin. I think some forts would be good. Now it's divided. Not being able to stand. Yada yada. So we have surplus budget allotments. Which I don't know what this does exactly. Other than add debt, which we can't quite afford right now. Our budget allocation from last year allowed us a surplus of funds, as noted by our treasurers. If we want our ambitions to unite the disparate nations into a single Russia under Tsar's rule, we cannot be shy about expending reserves into the foundation of what will be the Russian Empire. However, the bureaucratic process all but assures these investments will take some time to truly be directed towards the sectors we need. And once we finally have a chance to strike against our foes, all but guarantees what remains to be put into our war efforts. If we want to use these funds, the time is now. Guess I'll do an investment into the civilian industry and see what that does. I probably should have saved. Nah. You know what? I'm not going to reload any saves. The autosave went through anyway. But we need to save up to get some more electricity. So we'll just hang tight for now. Let's do the Western Fence scheme. Uleti. If one was to follow the road leading just out of Chita and heading southwest just before they crossed into the communist-held lands, they would come across a small settlement of Uleti. Initially nothing more of a normal village, Uleti earned the attention of the Tsar's generals as a final military outpost controlled by them in the west. A small military base had been built where soldiers guard the principal roads before it enters hostile territory. As part of the Western Fence scheme endorsed by most of the Tsar's generals and approved by His Majesty, Uleti will be reinforced, as everyone understands that it is a crucial choke point for an invader. By building a new, larger outpost there, we can ensure the safety of our warlord states and hopefully stall any possible enemy from the west before they reach Chita. Well, there we go. Oh, we can go ahead and invest in some stuff. We'll do agricultural methods. More farms, better farms would be good. Feels like my tried and true generally here. Let's go ahead and do the Eastern Fence scheme in Stridnyaya Olekma. On the bank of the river Olyokma, as it enters the Transbaikal, rests of a small town of Shrendiyaya Olekma, which could be considered our greatest base in the northeast. It has proven crucial in maintaining a line of defense against Radzevsky's fascists, and continues to be a checkpoint in the Tsar's army uses to exert its authority in the northeast, as well as to stop occasional raids by hostile warlords or simple bandit groups. Reinforcement will be required if we look to expand into the fascist-held lands and secure our flank to the north at the same time. As it is the only town we hold in the region, it must become a stronghold against any army. Sure. We could raid the Satka Republic. I don't know if I'm particularly worried about that. Leaning back in a chair in a study, Shepyanov contemplated all the change that would soon come. The cursed fascists to the east, the Freistan Bolsheviks to the west, two sides of the same hated coin, both seeking to bring down the legitimate government in Chita. There were countless internal troubles too, a pathetic czar, unending unrest, and a seemingly eternal lack of funds. On top of all of this, he had already figured that Semyonov was one foot in the grave. It was becoming a real mess of problems. However, it was his mess to resolve, and he would bring down anyone who disagreed with that, even in the unlikely event that it meant facing the Tsar himself. Once the dominance of the White Army, and himself by extension, was secured and the unrest suppressed, order would surely follow the long arm of imperial law across the Far East. Only then would peace begin to come to Russia. Then, as the twin evils of fascism and Bolshevism fell to the ground like coins, Shepyanov would watch, just as he had with the fascists all those years ago in Harbin. This time he would make sure they stayed dead. As they lay dying before him, he would finally smile. There we go. We got that going. Next we'll do the Eastern Defense Scheme in Tupik, south of the city of Olekma, where we last focused our efforts on backing up the garrison. Tupik is yet another village saved by the anarchy or oppression by the arrival of the White Army. Since we prepare for the very real possibility of war for Zevsky, known as the Vost of a war, the Eastern Defense Scheme has begun, and Tupik is a key part of that. By significantly reinforcing the settlement, we can end the constant raids in its surroundings and build yet another strong defensive point near the frontier. The situation in Tupik is considered different by many in the government, though, as the village is tiny and there are no pre-existing military installations there. Despite that, it is judged as crucial in forming a line in the east, and the Tsar's most trusted generals believe building up Tupik will be an easy process. Well, there we go. Looks like, oh, there goes the Australians. Meanwhile, it looks like Roz went ahead and got this little bit of land, which is good for when we take it over. How's our economic growth? Non-existent. Rodzevska's growing pretty well, at least. Which must be nice. It's really the only place out here in the Far East. Magadan's doing okay, actually. Next, let's do the Eastern Defense Scheme. The final outpost we must fortify, and perhaps the most important, seeing as we are heading into conflicts with fascists of the East, the town of Amazar. The Trans-Siberian Railway, although often damaged, rebuilt, and destroyed in the last years, has still remained a vital artery to the lands beyond the Urals, connecting city after city and allowing the transport of people and supplies across its length. Amazar has had the luck to not only be included in the dozens of towns the railway passes through, but also just barely escape the grip of Rodzevsky. As both an important railway junction and the last camp to the east, we must take great care in protecting the town. Reinforcements will be called to act as garrisons, and reconnaissance units will be formed there as well. Soon they might prove surprisingly useful. Well, there we go. Got the young general. Sitting at his desk, Dmitry Volkonogonov finished the lightest stack of paperwork for him, his writing quick and fluid. Armament requisition forms, reassignment orders, training assignments, and all the rest were quickly dealt with by the dedicated Volkogonov. However, all some men would take a break after dealing with as much as Volkogonov had been assigned. He simply moved on to the next stack of papers without hesitation. He knew he was being assigned all this paperwork because the old general did not like him. He made very little effort to hide it, but that did not slow him down in the slightest. When presented with such difficulties, he would simply have to succeed beyond all expectations. If he kept performing, one day somebody would have to take notice. And the only real problem he faced was A young officer in his command opened the door and saluted him, making Volkogonov look up immediately. Immediately he felt like he knew what this was about and developed a sense of dread. Sir, an officer got into a fight with a civilian while drunk. He's from your command, so his punishment's for you to decide. Volkogonov stood up and walked towards the officer. He didn't know if it was a sighing in relief that he hadn't been as bad as he expected, or exasperation that this was the third incident involving tensions between the soldiers and civilians this week. He just wished that the army and generals like Semyonov and Shapunov in particular would come to their senses and realize that they were meant to help the people, not hurt them. Very well. Lead the way. The officer frowned and looked at Volkogonov strangely. Sir, permission to speak freely? At Volkogonov's slight nod, he continued. Have you been sleeping well? You look terrible. It's been a long day. Without you, my friend. I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. Passing the torch. You asked to see me, sir? General Shapunov asked, standing face to face with his superior in the doorway. The old Ataman, who leaned on an intricately designed cane, looked as though he had one foot in the grave. The years had clearly not been kind to the man who once defied the Red Behemoth so many years ago. Indeed. Please, come in and take a seat, Semyonov said weakly, his voice almost a whisper. Shapunov did as he said and took a position on a dusty ventured sofa by the fireplace. The old man took longer, bones audibly creaking as he sat across from his protege. Boris, I'll get right to the point. I don't have nearly as much time to waste on platitudes these days. Oh, that makes two of us, Grigory. Just tell me what you need of me. Boris, my time here is running out. It shames me deeply that I won't be able to see Russia cleansed of the red menace in my lifetime, but perhaps I can rest more peacefully knowing the struggle will continue without me. When the time comes, I want you to take my place. Shapunov was speechless. He had long followed in Semyonov's footsteps, but to take his place? Grigory, I would be honored, but are you absolutely sure that I'm the one you want? I've had decades to think it over, Boris. Nobody truly understands what this movement means like you and I do. If anyone can bring order back to our sacred motherland, it is you. Shapunov's eyes, filled with renewed purpose, met the Ataman's. I won't lay you down, sir. Oh, how sweet. The Eastern Defense Scheme. Alright, so it looks like it's actually time to start doing some of these investments. So, we'll go ahead and do... Bazaar's investments. What is an empire without a military? And what is a military without a civilian industry to act as its support, producing anything and everything from combat rations to supplies needed for logistical support and beyond? Our empire will eventually span the entirety of Russia, and right now we will need to ensure that a precedent is set for the establishment of Tsar's investments in domestic civilian industries. Not just to support our ever-hungry military, of course, but to make guarantees that our state will not repeat the mistakes of the past and ensure that every Russian, from the wealthiest residents of our glittering cities to the poorest of the villages, are taken care of and given the opportunity to earn luxury. That I think we can get behind. What are these guys? They're just normal infantry. Okay. Well, we'll start training some guys slowly, but surely. Can we do 2 divisions? We can. See if we can't get that started. Off the bat. We'll also have time soon to reconnect some power grids. So we're going to go ahead and do that. There we go. Got some more electricity. After 60 days is done. Now we just get to sit back and, I don't know about relax, but just sit back. Dear Father, it's been some time since we've spoken, yes? In the past, I haven't had much opportunity to drive to write to you, and for that I sincerely apologize. My life has grown strange over the years, and I feel as though I have no avenue through which to vent my frustrations. You are one of the wisest men I've ever known, and I hope you can find it in you to give your foolish son good counsel. As you know, I spent much of my life in Australia after serving with the Fleet Air Arm. I don't know what this accent is, by the way, just bear with it. It was one of the happiest periods of my life, and regrettably, the situation has changed for the worse. Several years ago, I got an invitation from a group of Russian emigres in Harbin to attend a banquet celebrating the legacy of the Romanov dynasty. It seemed like a grand affair and the opportunity to celebrate my lineage. But instead, I found myself having a crown placed atop my head in the city of Chita, deep in the Siberian wastes. As I write, I still remain in Russia many years after I left Harbin, the emperor of a realm I have no real interest in ruling. This place is horrible, Father. I have no real power, and these old whites do not care about me or my well-being. The only thing they do care about is using my name to legitimize their barbaric wars and the atrocities that follow. If I attempt to make a decision, they look at me as though I have three eyes. This land is cold and harsh, and I miss Australia every day. I feel a deep pain in my heart when I think of the life I left behind. You are the only one I can think of to turn to, Father. I am locked inside a golden cage in a land that is foreign to me, and I do not know what to do. If nothing else, I can only ask that you forgive your son for being so stupid as to find himself in a situation such as this. Signed, Michael. Well, crikey. Another failed attempt at democracy. Look at that. And another video that we must end right now. I'm gonna cut it off here, my friends, but I thank you as always for watching. My name has been Mr. Dogboat333. If you like this video, if not, feel free to dislike, leaving comments, feedback down in the comment section below. I read all comments I get, and I do appreciate any of you big man have for me. The sub on the notification bell, keep up Dave's uploads as they come out. Leave your comments and feedback down in the comment section below. I read all comments I get, and I do appreciate any of you feedback you have for me. That's going to be it for now, my friends. I thank you all for watching. My name has been Mr. Dogboat333, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.